tips when you build and customize the Copilots in Microsoft Copilot Studio. I don't know if this is going to go through for the full 1 hour, so I was hoping Rami would talk more for me. But for those of you who don't know me, I'll talk about that soon. But for the agenda, for my 5 tips, I'm going to share how you can enable search with Bing Custom Search for generative answers. Then I'm going to talk about using the timeout topic. So this has existed since Power Virtual Agent days, but for me, I think it's good practice to have a timeout topic. It's basically handling when you haven't heard back from a user after a period of time. Otherwise, that session is always just going to exist until the user, closes their browser where that Copilot session is in. So for me, I think it's good practice to have a timeout topic. Then for the next 2 tips that I'm going to share, you can actually edit your Copilot in Visual Studio Code. So behind the topics and the actions, it uses YAML. So it's actually using PowerFX, but then it serializes it in YAML. So I'll show you that. And then even though you can copy and paste through the visual editor, you can also do it in the code editor. So that's a pretty cool tip. And then you can also log a custom telemetry event for app insights, so application insights in Azure. I might switch, I might show the custom telemetry event as a 3rd one, because that's going to take a while for it to show an app insights as well as a timeout topic. So yeah, might swap them around. So who am I? Who is she? I started my career back in 2010. So I was working for a Microsoft partner here in Wellington. I did my university postgraduate degree at Victoria University of Wellington. So I've been around since 2010 in the corporate world. Still don't feel like I'm corporate, because if you know me, this is what I'm like 24/7. So yeah, I started out with Dynamic CRM, and then 2016 was when we first heard about Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. And then later in 2016, at the end of the year, that's when it became GA. But I never really took notice of it until about 2017, a year later. So Shane Young, he is probably one of the most known people in the community from the Power App side. Back then, he had an EDX course where he showed how to use Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, and Power BI. And when I did the Microsoft Flow module of his course, that's when I fell in love with it. So I've fell in love with Power Platform ever since. These days, I work for Microsoft. I'm part of the DevRel team. So I'm a senior cloud advocate in the Power Platform Cloud Advocacy team. We are a team of 6. I'm the only one in this side of the world. We've got Gomo, who's in Durban, South Africa. We have Daniel Laskowitz, who is in the Netherlands, in Utrecht. Then we've got Scott Duro. For those of you who know Scott Duro, Rami's actually going to be seeing him next month at the Canadian Power Platform Summit and MVP Summit. So he's in my team. And then there's April Dunham. And then we've got Shavana Jackson, who is our PM. This photo is from the recent Microsoft AI Tour Sydney. And our breakout session on Microsoft Copilot was the 3rd highest attended session of the tour. So it just shows that there's a lot of, interest from the community on Copilot Studio. And we also ran 2 workshops during the day, and the workshops were the most attended workshop for the tour. We had a total of over 300 people in combined for both of those workshops. Hopefully I can go through that workshop material with you one day, but because there's still AI tours happening, we've got strict orders not to share it outside of AI Tour. I also have a YouTube channel, but at the very end, you'll see that I am an experimenter because I love playing and dabbling with all the different stacks and combining them into one. I'm working on a series at the moment, so we're hoping to publish in mid-May, so watch this space. So in terms of what is Copilot Studio, I've got this quote here from our Vice President of Conversational AI, So Microsoft Copilot Studio was announced last year at Microsoft Ignite in November. So as you've seen in the previous slides in Rami's presentation, it allows you to build and extend your Copilots in a single platform. So it's a software as a service product, which means every time you build your custom Copilot, it'll go live instantly. Whereas when you build your Copilot in Azure AI Studio, there's a little bit of groundwork that you need to do to get it up and running versus when you create your Copilot in Copilot Studio. So as mentioned, you can build your own custom Copilot today. You can also extend Microsoft Copilot. So there might be a bit of confusion on the term Copilot. So I'll just pause here and explain it a little bit. So think of it as you've got 3 lanes of Copilots. The first lane is what we call embedded Copilots. So in the demos that you saw earlier today, like for example, Power Pages from Mark McRae, you saw a Copilot that helped you build a Power Pages site as well as put that content together for a form of Power Pages. That is what we call an embedded Copilot. You can't extend it, that comes with the product. Then in the second lane, you have what we call solution accelerator Copilot. So think of it as your Microsoft 365 Copilot, where you can still use it as is, but in the scenario that you want to extend it, you can use Microsoft Copilot Studio. And then there's your third lane. When you want to have the flexibility of creating a Copilot to your own needs, in other words, a custom Copilot, and you want to publish it to your channel of choice, that's when you have a custom Copilot that you can build in Microsoft Copilot Studio. So hopefully that explanation makes sense. And of course, last year at Microsoft Ignite in November, Omar announced that the Copilot Studio would be included with the Microsoft 365 Copilot licensing, so that you can allow users to extend the capabilities of the Microsoft 365 Copilot using Copilot Studio. And then with this last one, the connected platform, it's about the extensibility capabilities of Copilot Studio, where you can hook into the other services that exist at Microsoft. So like I mentioned earlier, you've got Azure AI services, in particular Language Studio. And then there's the Azure Bot Framework, as well as some of the Power Platform services as well. So you saw Power Pages, you can build a code. Actually, I don't know if Mark demonstrated that, but like today with Power Pages, there's an option in the Power Pages workspace where if you want to build a Copilot based on your Power Pages site, it will do that in a few minutes and it will go live instantly. So as I mentioned, when you want to build and extend your custom Copilots, you use Copilot Studio and you do it all within that same web experience. You don't have to leave Copilot Studio and do it elsewhere. You can do it all within a single user interface. I'm not going to go through all this again because Rami covered it. So before I actually go into my 5 tips, I want to say, did you know that the first chatbot was created back in the 60s and it was called Elaiza? So my name is Elaiza, but I can now joke about this because people can understand what I mean. Because now I can say it's like the name Elaiza, but it's spelled with AI. Get it? Ha 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 ha. Okay, that's my afternoon joke. Okay, so let's start with the first tip. So what I'll do is I'll first show you how to enable Bing custom search and talk about it. Then I'm going to combine the timeout topic as well as logging of a custom telemetry event and application insights. And then I'll cover the code bit, which is editing your Copilot using YAML in Visual Studio Code, as well as you also have the ability to copy and paste the YAML code in the code designer in Copilot Studio. Not many people know about that, but it's quite handy when you want to reuse the same either logic or actions across your Copilots or topics. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to head over to my browser. And I've got a Copilot here called Bing. Oh no, that dropped off. Why did it drop off? Hang on, let me reshare. my screen. I think this is what happened to Rami earlier. Once you switched from your PowerPoint to the browser, if
it appears on the other screen.
That's fine. Now it's reconnecting. There we go.
Yeah.
Cool. I'd zoomed out a little bit because it's a bit zoomed in. So I have a Copilot here that I conveniently called Bingo. Get it? Bing. Hello, jokes. No. Okay, so when you set up your Copilot initially, as Rami showed, you can associate a public-facing URL, right? So that was the conversational boost. And that lives under a topic called conversational boosting. So you head over to topics and plugins, you select system, and then it's this topic here. When you click on data sources, it'll show you that it's pointing to the public-facing URL that you've entered. So in here, I've entered a New Zealand website. It's just, like come visit New Zealand. But up here, there's a drop-down. And when you select it, you can choose search with Bing Custom Search. So it's going to say, okay, well, by using search with Bing Custom Search, we're now going to not use that original public-facing URL that you provided. We're going to switch it over to Bing. So I'm going to click discard, and that's going to ask for a configuration ID. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, why would I want to use search with Bing Custom Search? So by default, you can add up to 4 public-facing URLs. In the scenario where you want to exclude a page, how do you do that? Well, you can't really do that with this. By using Bing Custom Search, you can do that. But if you also want to add more than 4 sources, you can use Bing Custom Search again. So I'm going to head over to my other browser. Oops, not that one. And so what you want to do is head over to customsearch.ai, and you need an account. So I'm already logged in. And in there is where you can create what we call a custom search instance. So I have already created one for today's Global Power Platform Bootcamp session. I've called it Dev Copilot Studio. And in here, I've already added a web page. But you'll see that based on this URL, it's only pointing to a web page that talks about accommodation across New Zealand. And I've already published this configuration. So that ID that the Copilot is asking for back in that generative answers action is this ID. So what you do is you copy it, and then you head back to your Copilot, and then you just paste it in there, and you save it. So now the data source should now be using my custom search instance, which it is. And so now if I type in a question, it's asked down here, what accommodation is in Wellington, it'll then go through my configuration search instance, and then it'll tell me a response. And as Rami mentioned, there will be a citation down here where it will tell you where it's grabbed the information from, where it's collated that information and parsed it back to natural language to the user. And if you hover over it, it'll show you that it's pointing to that URL. And that's because that's what I defined in the custom search instance. So if I ask it another question, what are the activity deals in Wellington? It'll then be like, I don't know. And that's because we're pointing it to an accommodation webpage. And then if you ask another question, so let's say asking for an itinerary in Wellington. So again, can I have an itinerary for Wellington? It should also come back and say, I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that. And that's because our search configuration has been limited and is restricted to that single web page. So in a scenario where I want to include more web pages, all I need to do is go back to my search instance in Bing Custom Search, head back to my configuration, add a URL. So I'll just copy this one. So this is the one that'll give me information on itineraries. So I'll type it in there, edit. It'll then tell me, okay, you need to publish it because it recognizes that I've added a new URL. And also down here, it's quite interesting because it also gives you suggested sites that you want to include. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention here, there's also ability to block any web pages as well that you don't want a user to ask a question on and for the Copilot to collate information on. So that's also an option. So I'll click on publish. And once it's published, that's it. So now if I go back to, and I haven't done anything other than adding an additional URL. So now it's that same question. Can I have an itinerary? Oop. Now have a response based on that second URL that we've added into the search instance. And there you go. So now if I hover over the reference, you'll see that it's pointing to that second URL that I've provided. Cool. All right, so that's tip number one. Tip number two is about the timeout activity. So as I mentioned, in the scenario where you've got multiple Copilots, in my opinion, I think it's always a good idea to have a way to handle timeouts. So in terms of creating a timeout topic, I already have one here. You need to select that trigger. It's in here. So if you hover over whatever you've already got in the trigger, so I think by default it's phrases, there's going to be an icon up here that appears. It's like two arrows. You click on it, and then it'll give you some options in terms of the different triggers that you want. So as I mentioned, by default, it's phrases. If you scroll all the way down, there's one called inactivity. So that's the one that you select. You can also define a message. So in here, I have a message, and as Rami pointed out earlier in the keynote, PowerFX is something that's just going to exist across different products and services in the Power Platform. And today it exists in Copilot. So you can use PowerFX to define how you want the data output to be. So this expression in here is basically, I just go back to this one. So we're pretty much just saying retrieve the current date and time of the user's time zone and display it in the long date time format. And then I'm telling the user, if you want to start a new conversation, please say hello. And then it's just going to end it. But what I'm going to do next is show you how to add a custom telemetry event for App Insights. So when I click the plus option to add a new node, under Advanced, there's the option here called Log a Custom Telemetry Event. Now, before you do this, you do have to set up your application insights in Azure. And in your application insights, there's a value in here called connection string. So what you need to do is copy this value, and back in Copilot Studio, you want to go to Settings, I'm here. Hang on. I need my brain to kick in. Here we go. Copilot details, click Advanced, and in here, there's a field called connection string. So I'm going to paste that value in here, and that will just be that connection string that you've copied from your application insights instance. Hit save. And now I need to go back and publish my bot. This is the first time I'm setting this up in this environment, so I hope by the time I show the other stuff, the app insights event will be logged. Fingers crossed. Okay, so I'm going to head back to that Copilot. Am I in the mic one? I think I am. Yes, I am. I'll go back to my timeout and go back in here and add that custom telemetry event. And so this is also a nice way to keep track of what's been happening in your Copilot. So for example, let's say you're an insurance company and you've just sent out an email to all of your members to let them know that the policy renewals have been issued and the price is slightly going up. So if you have a public facing website and you've got lots of members asking about why is the price increase, and by logging a custom telemetry event every time it happens, your team in your company will be able to be like, okay, we need to do more comms on this because a lot of people are asking about it. So that's what this is all about. I should be able to define the details of it. We'll go ahead and load up the Copilot in Teams so I can show you how the timeout and the telemetry event works. So that was me testing earlier. This, surface, now I'm going to leave that so that it times out and we can see the telemetry event logged in application insights. So the last two tips that I wanted to cover was in regards to the YAML behind your Copilot. So the tip that I'll share next is how to edit your Copilot in Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to bring up Visual Studio Code. Actually, no, I'll go back to the Copilot and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. So I'll go back to a topic. So let's go with the latest service model topic, since that was a question that I asked in the Copilot in Teams. So there's an option in here called Open Code Editor. So this is a built-in code editor in Copilot. So what you see in here, this is the language of YAML. So you can update this directly in the code editor. But what if you wanted to download your solution and then edit it in Visual Studio Code Editor and then say that as part of your source code? So I've got a new window in here. I've got my terminal open. Is everyone familiar with Power Platform PackCLI, like in PowerShell? Okay, well, I'll walk through it and hopefully I'll do a good job at explaining it. So at this point in time, it's pointing to a folder in my C drive called dev. So what I'm going to do now is create a new folder and I'll call it 03 demo. Cool. So right off the bat, it's created straight away. And to confirm that it has created, I'm going to use the command ls. So that will show me a list of the folders. And we can see that my folder that I just created was done a minute ago. So now what I'm going to do is change the location to point to that new folder path. So I'm going to go set location. So I'm just going to change it to 3. Let me just do that from scratch.
Right, path.
Oh yeah, path, sorry. Yep, afternoon break. And then put in oh, sorry, my keys. Cool. There we go. So then what I want to do is I want to clone the solution that my Copilot lives in so that we can download it from the site, as in from the Power Platform, Power Apps Maker portal, sorry, and then open it locally in Visual Studio. So let's see, got my notes here just to remind me. Oh yeah, so in terms of understanding the commands that come with Power Platform PackCLI, a tip here that I have is use help. So this will tell you all of the commands that exist for a solution. So as you can see, there's a list in here of the commands that exist under solution. So the one that I'm going to use is clone. So as I mentioned, it'll download and unpack my solution for me. So now I can go pack solution clone, and it's going to ask me for the name of my going to ask me for the name of my solution. So it's called Benitez here. Copilot. So now when I hit enter, it's going to go and find that solution using my user authentication details. So it's going to start the solution export, and once it downloads, it's going to unpack it in that file directory that I specified, and then I can show you how to update the code in Visual Studio Code Editor. So then, now if I go user shortcut code dot, this will now open Visual Studio Code with that directory. So we're going to see a new window load. And if I expand this, we'll see that it's got my Copilot in here. And if I expand bot components, these are all the topics that exist against that Copilot. Pretty cool, right? So then, another cool thing that you can do is, so let's say you're working simultaneously in here as well as in Copilot Studio. So now I'm back in my Copilot and Copilot Studio. And let's say I create a new topic, right? And I go from blank. And let's say I want my phrase to be, oops, let's first give this a name. Let's call it M365 Copilot. And so let's add some phrases. So what is M365 Copilot? I've just created a new topic called M365 Copilot. So now if I go back to Visual Studio Code, we won't see it here, but what I can do is also use the command to load and you point it back again. And now I can go pack solution sync. Fingers crossed this works. So now it's going to go okay, that didn't work. So what it was meant to do was it was meant to grab the topic and then update my source in here. But that's okay. The show must go on. So what I can do as well is if I go back to an actual topic and if I expand it, in here we'll see the data. And if I just minimize the terminal, PowerShell, this is showing what makes up this topic. So if I go and open up that topic in Copilot Studio, so again, what is Copilot Studio? See that exact same YAML reference in there. So the idea is that when you make your edits in Visual Studio Code, and when you're ready to push it back to Copilot Studio, you use the pack CLI command again. So you use pack solution pack. So in other words, package it all up together. And then afterwards, you do pack solution import. And then it's going to import the changes that you've made in this directory and push it back up to the Copilot and Copilot Studio. So let's do that now. Hopefully this works. I've got my notes here. So in terms of the name itself, so let's call this update Feb 23, and I'm going to hit save. Cool, so that's now saved. So then we'll do the mouse. Okay. Sorry, the podium here is on an angle, so the mouse just kind of like falls down. So now if I go pack solution pack, and I'm going to pack up my file.
Elaiza, I think you might need to be in one more folder. I think you might need to be in the Benitez here Copilot folder.
Right, okay, so set. Tab not working. Is that looking better now? Yeah. Oh. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay, so now it's packaged it up. So now if I go pack solution import, and we use that same path. Now I'm going to import it. Oh, I should have done the sync because then it would have shown, but that's okay. It's fine. Okay. So then another tip from me is if you don't already have it open up in a browser, you can just go pack tool and then maker and then oops, sorry. And that should open up a browser with the Power Apps portal site. And then from there you can get to Copilot Studio, but that's just a tip. So now if I go back to here, and if I refresh it, fingers crossed, we should see the name update to February, hyphen update February 23. So that's how you use, Visual Studio Code using the Power Platform pack CLI commands. And as I mentioned, it's helpful when you want to, as developers and team, when you want to work on it outside of this visual designer. But in terms of the last tip, so today, if I select a node, actually I'll go to a different node. I'll go to this one. You'll see that in the visual designer, I've got options here called cut, copy, and then paste. So if I do it through here, right? And now if I set another node and I go paste, it'll go and paste that action that I copied. So I'll just delete that. But another cool thing is you can actually do that within the code editor as well. So let's say I want to copy this. And then if I go back to the visual designer, and then if I go paste, it'll then paste whatever you've copied from the code editor back into the visual designer. So it works from the code editor into the visual designer. So that's another tip. Are aware of that. Okay, so I'm going to head back to Teams, and hopefully that timeout has occurred. Cool. So as you can see, it's timed out, and with that PowerFX expression, I've included like a date and time in a particular format. This is appearing because I've got it pointing to a redirect topic on whether I've answered the question, but that's how the timeout activity works. So next, let's head over to Application Insights, and let's see if that was logged. Okay, so if I go into logs,
Try to go to the queries tab. Maybe there's something pre-baked there. You can just run that. So just
this one.
yeah.
Yeah. It's meant to. Okay. I how it works, but through Dwayne's video. So Dwayne is a principal program manager at Microsoft. He's actually got it.
Terra is the IT painkiller. Remote monitoring and management, remote access, help desk and ticket. Today, until we see the events go from 216 to a new number of events logged. And so I will speed up the video to make sure that you guys can see this happen. Now that we see that we have the additional events at 225 now, and you'll see here that sample event did get logged. And as we're looking at it, you can see the information on this as well as you can see.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go slightly back a bit in this video. So it'll appear as a logged event, as Dwayne said in his video, and it'll show the number of sessions where the telemetry event has occurred. And then when you want to dive deeper into it in terms of the data, that's when you click in it. And then over on the right-hand side is where you can see the information. And the bit that I was getting confused on when I was showing you how to do this in the Copilot Studio, there's normally an area where you can type what you want to be logged in the telemetry event. So I need to go back and check why that wasn't appearing for me. But yeah, this serialized data is basically, it's grabbing what you've told it to log and log it in application insights. So I'm going to go back to my slides and just play them. So in terms of that enable Bing custom search, if you want to see a 1-minute version, we've got a TikTok video on it. This was a paraphrase expression that I used in the timeout message. But again, my tip for you is because in Copilot Studio, you can't see your paraphrase expression, live compared to when you use your paraphrase expression in a text control in a Canvas app. So if you ever want to test to make sure your paraphrase expression is correct, my advice is usually just creating a label input or a text input in a separate Canvas app. Put your paraphrase expression there. If it looks okay, then just copy and tweak it as needed in Copilot Studio. So we now have a sample library called Paraplatform Snippets. And in here, we have a section for Copilot Studio where you can find YAML snippets that you can copy and paste into your Copilot Studio, where you can add it as a node in your Copilot. We only have one so far, but we will be building the samples, so watch this space. If you want to download the Copilot Studio implementation guide, you can take a photo of this and check it out later. Otherwise, there is a blog post on the Copilot blog site. But yeah, there will be a link to where you can download a guide. And then if you want some inspiration for solutions that were built with Copilot, we have a blog post here where we featured 10 use cases from a hackathon that we ran last year. One of the winning solutions was the Teaching Accelerator app, where a person in the UK built a model-driven app that has a custom page that has an embedded Copilot that helps teachers build a curriculum and lesson plans for their students. And then one of the other solutions, which I think is really cool for any parents in the room, is from a person who's based in Denmark. He created a Canvas app that basically helps his autistic child to do like daily routines in their household, such as brushing their teeth and tying their shoelaces. But they used a Copilot to help generate those steps for that task, as well as generate the images for the task so that the child could follow along, both in reading comprehension and visual comprehension. So that was really cool. We also have a number of links that you can go to today in terms of wanting to learn more about Copilot. And then for our channels as well, if you want to stay up to date with some content, we have our TikTok account that just has 1-minute videos, so short consumable content. And then for a more deeper in-depth dive, we have our Microsoft Developer YouTube channel, as well as our Paraplatform YouTube channel. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And again, thanks for helping me out with my Patsy Align commands. I didn't point it to the right folder. Yeah. Questions? Questions, anyone? Was there anything in the chat?
Nothing online.
So if you want to break, because our next one isn't until 3, so feel free to get up and have a bit of a refresher. Someone has their hand up online. Is that you?
They can go off mute if they want to.
Maybe that was a mistake.
Yeah, just a reaction. Or they can ask the question in the chat. That's fine as well. The only thing I wanted to add is the importance of what you were demonstrating in terms of the YAML fragment.
Yes.
Like, love it or hate it, YAML is actually very powerful and it's there to stay. So even when you're doing a Canvas app, you can export that Canvas app as YAML file and then put it into your source control.
Yeah.
The PackCLI commands that you were demonstrating, they're all used throughout the ALM accelerator for DevOps. The good thing about having a YAML file is that it's structured. So even a space has meaning in it. And it always comes up, if you have an app that you're editing and then you export it, always comes up with the same format, which makes it source control friendly because it's like writing code, right? It's better than JSON, it's better than XML because of that structure that is available in it. So what Elaiza was demonstrating in terms of downloading that content, extracting it, putting it into Azure DevOps or GitHub, into your source control, and then doing a diff. So if someone changed something and broke something, then you can go into the history of your Azure DevOps and you can do a compare between a previous version and a current version. You can see exactly what has changed. And also you can hack it. So let's say two people are working on it together and then one person updated one section, another person updated the other section. When you merge it, it will straight away raise a conflict and will say there's two changes and you can see exactly what has changed and you can merge them manually. So that's not something that we can easily do with XML files. So if you think about traditional solution exports and then everything is XML fragments, and trying to merge that is most of the time unsupported, but also very difficult to do without breaking the solution. So having that in YAML file is definitely a big advantage and is highly encouraged, especially from a source control management perspective.
And while Rami is talking, I retyped the command pat solution sync, and then after it exported and unpacked the solution, we now see that new topic up there that I created earlier.
Right.
That's why low code is dead.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that this is actually a hint to how the product team is looking at using solutions. So what you're saying in here is that you didn't have to download the solution, right? So all you did was just a sync, and it figured out that there is a change in there, and then changed it in there. So imagine if you've got source control that can do that on your behalf. So you made the change somewhere in the platform, and you click a button, and it goes and synchronizes that into your source control. That's actually quite powerful. And think of how that might work if you have it in the context of your entire dynamic solution, your entire Power Platform solution. So you don't have to do a download and an unpack and then a push back to source control and all of that. You can just do a sync and it will do that for you. And then once it's synced, if you can sync back into another environment, that's also very powerful because then you don't have to download, push into your source control, trigger a pipeline, and then push into another environment, back and then upload. You can just do a sync and it will take it straight there. So think about what the future is holding here.
I have a confession, and I know that this is a safe space. I only learned PackCLI in the last month, so it's very cool. I find it very time saving because beforehand you have to go through the interface and you have to go to the solutions and you select the solution that you want. You click on export and then it'll be like downloaded successfully. But then if you forget to click on the button, it won't actually download, and you're like, I have to go through that process again. But yeah, PackCLI pretty much streamlines that process, and as Rami said, like it's used in ALM as well. So it's very, very cool to learn more about it. So I am a newbie at it, and as you saw, I forgot to point the path to the folder, but it's okay. That's why we have friends in the crowd to help us out. But yeah, hopefully you learned some cool tips, and sorry about not getting the application insights query working on my end, but at least you saw from Dwayne's video how that works. By the way, Dwayne has really amazing video content on YouTube. In my opinion, he is the PM that covers things that not many other people cover in the community. So yeah, go follow him. He pretty much posts every other week. And yeah, he's a guy to learn from when it comes to learning more about Copilot. So highly recommend you check him out on YouTube. But yeah, thanks for having me. And as I mentioned, in the future, I would like to do a session on the CLU and CQA for Copilot so that you guys can understand how you want to refine your Copilot to answer and respond in the way that you want it to, based on, rather than having it respond in the way it wants, using the built-in natural language understanding model that it uses. Thank you.